Hello and welcome to Sriram's IAS. We hereby are in the continuation of this series in which we are discussing the book by Sriram Sir himself, chapter wise. In this series, we are currently doing the chapter 4, which is about planning and India's 5-year plans. In this chapter, we are already done with the first video, in which we discussed about why planning, what are different types of plans, and how do we actually do the planning at, I would say, national level. What was the significance of going through planning or then turning towards our planned economy to mixed economy, how that journey came into place. Now in this video, we will be discussing about the 5-year plans of India. That how India started with the first 5-year plan, second, third, fourth, fifth, till 12th. We will discuss all of them, and from the next chapter, we will be discussing we will have the next chapter, that is chapter 5, that is about Niti Aayog, and we will discuss Niti Aayog and then its developments, that how we progressed from planning commission towards Niti Aayog, how Niti Aayog developed its 3-year vision, 7-year vision and the 20-year long vision. At the end, we will conclude this chapter, the chapter 4 and chapter 5, with India's vision of 2047 and 2070. That we already discussed, that India has goals to build itself as a developed nation by 2047 and be a climate friendly nation or with net zero targets by 2070. For those, we need to discuss the plans of India, and that will be at the end of the next chapter, that is chapter 5. Post that, we will start chapter 6. That is the entire journey. In today's video, we will be discussing about every 5-year plan. You hereby are requested that you should at least do one thing, that is keep your notebook and pen with you, make notes, running notes, and these notes I will be telling you the points which you must note down in your notes. Those points are very much important for your prelims and mains both, because in prelims only, multiple times UPSC has asked this question about the targets and the growth rate which was achieved by different plans. When was the plan holiday? There was a question which could have been indirectly linked to the 5-year plans. There was a question that this question came in 2019, I believe so, that arrange these events in chronological order, whether that was nationalization of banks, whether that was the land reforms or the constitutional amendments which happened in the past. The governments by Jawaharlal Nehru, the government or the reforms taken under Indira Gandhi, or the reforms taken under our different prime ministers. This year also we had a question about vice presidents or the presidents of India. So thereby we should understand that these 5-year plans are the economic history of India. And these 5-year plans must be thoroughly done by every UPSC aspirant, because this is highly important for UPSC mains. Clear with this? So let's begin this video, and before we go into the lecture, before we go into the content of this lecture, I would highlight that if you are facing any issues or if you want to connect to us, if you really want that you should have direct contact with Sriram's IAS Hyderabad, so you can scan this QR code. This is our Telegram channel in which we post the PDFs of these lectures, in which we post daily based current affairs or I would say MCQs for upcoming prelims attempt. All of that is being posted on this Telegram channel. Further, if you want to have one-on-one conversation or mentorship session, you just need to scan this QR code, and on this QR code what you will get is a direct link to a Google form. Once you fill that form, you will get connected to one of the good mentors at Sriram's IAS. Clear with this? If you have any other confusion, you can email me on this email ID. Clear? Now, moving further to 5-year plans, we will start with the first 5-year plan. The first 5-year plan came in 1951 to 1956. The rationale for having 5-year plans is already discussed with all of you in the past video. In this lecture, we will be discussing with the key facts of these plans. So thereby, the first 5-year plan was from 51 to 56, and after every plan, there will be next plan. But in between, there was a plan holiday, there were rolling plans. there were multiple crises happened at the national level, whether that was war with China, Pakistan or any other thing which hampered this process of planning. We will be going through all of this one by one. So keep the facts in your notes, or you will later on download this PPT also, and then keep this PPT with you because it is highly concise and you won't find, I would say, lesser than this notes in the market. So this is very much concise. It has our book also, and it has the snips from the MHA's document which was released by Ministry of Home Affairs, the document about the 5-year plans, and that document encompasses everything which is highly relevant for UPSC. Last time also I traced 1 or 2 questions from this document. That is why I usually use this document for 5-year plans. There were multiple questions which I can trace from this document. That is why I have pasted the snips of this across the PPT, and you will see that there is integration of this document into our book by me. So thereby, starting with this first 5-year plan, our prime target was agriculture. Why? Because India had a stressed agriculture due to large scale food grain imports and inflationary pressures. So there were 2 things. That is, first we had to import a large food grain and then distribute it into our population, because we had to maintain a healthy population and our birth rate was high, our death rate was high. Why? Because we had nutritional deficiencies. That is why we had to sustain our population. In order to sustain that population, we had to feed them, and in order to feed them we had to import a lot because our agricultural productivity was less. Remember, there was a question in 2024 about agricultural productivity, 2023, agricultural productivity of India and China, in which it was said that agricultural productivity of India is more than China, which was a false statement. Why? Because if you had just a vision that India's agricultural productivity was very less since 1951 and it is still less as compared to China. Clear? So thereby our agricultural productivity was less. We had to import large scale food grains. We had to ensure that our prices remain less inflationary because it was imported inflation. What is imported inflation? We will read it later on. The actual growth which this plan achieved was 3.61%. However, our target was 2.1% of growth. Remember that we had minimal growth targets in the initial periods, and this growth rate which India was having in the initial decades was termed as Hindu growth rate. Clear? Now one more thing, the annual average growth as per the original plan and the target exceeded the actual target, the actual achieved growth was more than what was targeted. This plan was, one of the main architects of this plan was K.N. Raj of India's first 5-year plan. So remember this first 5-year plan. This first 5-year plan, it was based on Harrod-Domer model. What were the challenges which India faced at this stage was, first, influx of refugees. There were too many refugees. Second, there was severe food shortage, mounting inflation in the country. These are the 3 main challenges which our first 5-year plan addressed. Second, the plan focused on agriculture, price stability and transport and power sector. So 4 things: agriculture, which was the prime focus. Second was price stability. Third was electricity or power, and fourth was transport. It was a successful plan primarily because good harvest was there in agriculture. So thereby, if there happens to be La Nina or El Nino year which is directly impacting the Indian agriculture, which is directly impacting the Indian economy, it means in that year our plan may not be that much successful, which happened in the next plans, upcoming plans. So objectives of rehabilitation of refugees were there, food self-sufficiency and control of prices. This was more or less achieved. However, the bigger problem, which was influx of refugees, still persists in India. Second 5-year plan, which came in 1956 to 1961, is also known as Nehru-Mahalanobis model. So there were 2 main architects of this plan. One was our Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, and Mahalanobis, who was the economist of that time. Now remember, this was Harrod-Domer model and this was Nehru-Mahalanobis model. So this plan also had agricultural growth targets and those were achieved. The major stress was shifted to establishing heavy industries. Remember this, we had focus on establishing heavy industries. The plan exceeded the targeted growth rate. Whatever target was there, this plan exceeded and achieved over the target. First, remember, simple aggravative Harrod-Domer growth model was again used for overall progression, projections and strategy of the plan. However, this was the broader sectors for agriculture and industry was based on 2 and 4 sector model. This 2 and 4 sector model was developed by P.C. Mahalanobis, and that is why this plan is also known as Mahalanobis plan. So thereby you need to understand this clearly. In the second plan, in the second 5-year plan, we had 2 models which we used. One was the model by Mahalanobis, another was the Harrod-Domer growth model. This was used in second 5-year plan, and this is clearly mentioned in the government document. Second 5-year plan also was conceived as an atmosphere of economic stability, because already we had first 5-year plan which brought in economic stability, which achieved a good growth rate. It was felt that agriculture could be accorded now lower priority, because agriculture was already going good. Agriculture was already I would say progressing at a better growth rate. We already achieved the targets. That is why we now shifted towards heavy industries. Heavy industries was the main prime focus of second 5-year plan. So the plan focused on rapid industrialization, heavy and basic industries, advocated huge imports through foreign loans. So that is where we will bring in injections into our economy. Do you remember the first, I would say third or fourth lecture in which we discussed about circular model of economy, circular flow of money, income. Now in this model I told you that it was households and firms. With these two, there was an interaction of government, financial institutions and foreign sector or external sector. Now this external sector brings in either injections or leakages. Leakages are what? Leakages are imports. And injections are what? Investments or exports. Now these investments are here, foreign loans. Remember that we discussed it earlier. These foreign loans will come into our economy. However, imports will bring in leakages. They will take away money from our economy to the foreign economies or to the foreign sector. However, this was balanced somehow, but it created a government debt which we still are owning. Clear? Now remember this, the industrial policy of 1956 was based on the establishment of socialistic pattern of society. Now remember this, this is very much important. 1956 industrial plan was adopted, and it was adopted only on the basis of socialistic pattern of what? Socialistic pattern of society. Clear? So till this date we had that ideology of socialism, the ideology of planned economy, the ideology of command economy, the ideology of state being the main central player in the market. That is what our socialist pattern of society means. This plan led to, or this plan came up with acute shortage of forex. Why so? Why did there happen to be an acute shortage of forex? Because we were totally dependent on, or we were having the policy to import more and more from outside, whether that was heavy industries, food grains or any other thing. When we increased our imports, it means we are diminishing or we are exhausting our forex. We are spending our forex reserves. And once we spend our forex reserves in order to buy imports, in order to increase, or this exhaustion of forex reserves leads to what? Leads to vulnerabilities increasing of the domestic economy. And once more leakages are there from the domestic economy, it means our money, which otherwise should have been spent into this circle, is going outside and will come back later after many years if it happens so. Thereby, this led to pruning of development targets. It means we decrease our developmental targets. We kept the development at a bit backstage. Price rise was also seen. About 30% price rise happened. There was a decline in the earlier plans. Second 5-year plan was only moderately successful. Remember this. It was only moderately successful. So whatever I am highlighting over here, you need to keep it in your running notes. Then only it will benefit you. Remember? Now, what was the main strategy of Nehru-Mahalanobis plan? The strategy was industrialization had to be rapid enough. The country will attain developing, or it will start developing basic industries. Once these basic industries will start developing, then we will build heavy industrialization, and through this we will build machines. Once machines are in place, then production will increase. Once the production will increase, we will have growth, and there will be an effect of trickle down, which we already read, that the trickle down effect will come in place. To make machines, thereby there will be further development. So first focus was on capital goods. Second, import substitution was there. Protective barriers were enabled for domestic alternatives, reducing reliance on foreign goods and capital. Public sector leadership was there because sizable public sector investment was there. That public sector or government should have larger role in the growth and development. Small scale industries were focused on that we should develop small scale industries. And there should be the small scale industries should be focused on the consumer goods. However, government should focus on capital goods like electricity, cement, steel and tools, because these are those industries, if we invest in these industries, they will lead to the domino effect of developing all the other sectors. Understood? So what were the expected benefits of this model, Nehru-Mahalanobis model? It was expected that there will be an all-round investment. It will attract comprehensive investment across the sectors, across agriculture, industries, across pharma, services, every sector will get developed. Second, the township model, that is we will build industrial townships like those built in Bhilai, those built in Bokaro, Jamshedpur or multiple other industrial sectors will be developed in these industrial townships. Like the way we are developing today SEZs, we are developing the, I would say, export-oriented zones, I would say special economic zones, industrial growth corridors. These growth corridors where I would say that they were main focus of the second 5-year plan, the Mahalanobis model. Second, agricultural growth. This 5-year plan talked about that farm growth will be there, but with machines, chemicals and fertilizers. However, the effects of this, or I would say the negative or cons of this, are seen today. That is what we witness in today's India, that our states of Western India, whether that is Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, this was the belt which initially got influenced by Green Revolution. And post 1960s, we witnessed that there was huge production in terms of, I would say, agriculture. High yielding variety was introduced. We will discuss that also. But this turned into overuse of fertilizers, overuse of agriculture, overuse of groundwater, which turned the soil saline, which increased the chemical, I would say, presence in the crops, which increased the causes, the disease in the population, and it turned into that this western or this belt of northern India from Punjab to Bihar turned out into a belt of cancer, or a cancer belt, where from every household there is a patient of cancer. There runs a train for only cancer patients, that is a cancer special train or cancer express, like a train which is specially dedicated for these cancer specialists, cancer patients. Further, there was focus on defense strength, that we will increase our defense and national security. Exports will get boosted and self-reliance will be increased by industrial diversification. However, these were expected targets, but there was criticism of this model also. What was the criticism? First was sectoral imbalance. The heavy industries created imbalance with agriculture and consumer goods sector. First, because there was imbalance created between agriculture and consumer goods. Second, slow poverty reduction. The reliance was on trickle down theory, which had slow and late effects. Thereby, once we started the capital intensive growth under the second 5-year plan, this capital intensive growth was expected that the effects of trickle down will have sooner impact, but it took a long time to have actual ground level impact. That is why this model was criticized. Now moving to the Industrial Policy Resolution of 1956, which was brought in April 1956 under this second 5-year plan. It defined that states' role in industrial development would be to develop heavy industries, to invest in capital goods, and to help small scale industries develop faster. That was the Industrial Policy Resolution of 1956. That is what we should remember, and that is all what we should remember from second 5-year plan. Now we will move to the third 5-year plan, which was from 1961 to 1966. This third 5-year plan brought in a balanced approach, because in the first 5-year plan we were heavily inclined towards agricultural development. In the second 5-year plan we invested into the industrialization and heavy machines, or I would say that capital goods only. But in the third plan we adopted a balanced approach. What was this balanced approach? This approach talks about a balance between industry and agriculture for self-sustaining economy, that our economy should be self-sustaining. Then we resorted to borrowings from International Monetary Fund. Now this was to serve as a balance of economic crisis or payment crisis. Which crisis? The crisis which was brought in because it led to the shortage of forex. The second 5-year plan witnessed acute shortage of forex. Do you remember this? That is why in the third 5-year plan, first time we went to borrow money from IMF. However, third 5-year plan was coincided by I would say extreme events which otherwise or which do disrupt any of the economies of the world. Whether that you take Cold War, World War I, World War II, or any other wars between any of the colonial powers or between any of the countries of this world. Even if you take Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Palestine, Nagorno-Karabakh, you take any of the conflicts, Sudan, South Sudan, Africa, the 9 countries in the Africa who are fighting, the Venezuelan crisis, the recent most crisis of Venezuela when the Maduro was captured by the Trump administration or arrested by Trump administration for its oil exports. Now this all comes with economic disruptions. That is what happened in third 5-year plan. The external challenge was, first we had a war with China and Pakistan in 1962 and 1965. This disrupted the plan implementation. So thereby, in this year, we wouldn't, or even if we tried a lot, we may not achieve the actual targets which we had. So third 5-year plan, which had a target growth of 5.6%, achieved just 2.8% of the growth. Clear? So at its conception, it was felt that Indian economy has entered a take-off stage. It was thought that Indian economy in the past 2-5 years or in the past decade has achieved a good growth rate and has achieved over the target, or both the plans were successful. Whether we say it was truly successful or it was moderately successful, both the plans were successful enough. Now the third stage, when it was said that India is now a self-reliant and a self-generating economy, it was thought so. However, based on the experience of the first 2 plans, agricultural production was seen as a limiting factor in India's economic development. Thereby, agriculture was given as a top priority to support the exports and industry. Clear that this we will help, or we will understand, or we will start developing or producing more agricultural output, and we will start exporting it. We will develop our export strength in agricultural output. That is what was thought. The plan was, though, a thorough failure. Why so? In reaching the targets, why was it a failure? Due to unforeseen events. What were those events? First, the Chinese aggression in 1962, the Indo-Pakistan War in 1965, there was drought in 1965 to 66. Due to the conflicts, the approach during this later phase was shifted from development to defense and development. So thereby, we had a lot of expenditure in the name of defense. And that is why our growth targets were not achieved. We had to spend a lot of money into defense expenditure. And post third 5-year plan, we will go through plan holidays. And what are these plan holidays? Or why should we go through plan holidays? Because in order to recover from the setbacks which came due to external shocks during the third 5-year plan, we had to settle, or we had to come back, or we had to, I would say, regain the strength which Indian economy had. We had to have higher targets. That is why the plan holidays came. Fourth plan could not be implemented due to multiple crises. The 3 annual plans for 1 year operated instead of this fourth 5-year plan. So in the first annual plan, during plan holiday, it was from 66 to 67. Second was from 67 to 68, and third was from 68 to 69. What were the causes of these plan holidays? First was the war with China and Pakistan. Second was economic troubles and inflation, which we had because we had to borrow in the second 5-year plan. In this third 5-year plan, we had to borrow from IMF also. Floods and forex crisis, because forex were exhausted, or we had acute shortage of forex in the second 5-year plan itself. The death of our prime ministers, Prime Minister Nehru and Lal Bahadur Shastri, there was political instability at the national level. That is why we had plan holidays. So these 3 plan holidays, or 3 years of annual plans, led to or came up after the failure of third 5-year plan, and we just need to remember the date only, 66 to 69, because there was not major things which came up in these plan holidays. However, widespread distribution of high yielding varieties of seeds happened, and that is where our green revolution comes in place. Now once we started, because in this era, or in 1960s, we witnessed in 1960s, we witnessed that India had acute food shortage also. Because of the droughts, because of famine, we had acute food shortage. And once we had this food shortage, we had to import food grains from USA, which USA said that we cannot export wheat, PL40, to India now. Once that was denied to us, this led to the thinking, and thereby our economists and agricultural experts, Mr. Swaminathan Sir, they went on to implement the green revolution, the famous green revolution of 1960s. This green revolution brought in the high yielding variety seeds. These seeds were distributed, and fertilizers were distributed at subsidized rates in the regions of northern India, in the I would say western UP, Punjab and Haryana. These were the states which were I would say got benefited from green revolution in the first phases of itself. Extensive use of fertilizers, exploitation of agriculture, irrigation, potential soil conservation due to annual plans. The economy absorbed the shocks generated during the third plan. It paved the path for planned growth ahead. Now, after this, in 1960, due to all of this crisis, rupee got devalued, or we had to devalue our rupee by around 60%. In June 1966, rupee was devalued by about 60% under World Bank pressures, because our economy was highly unstable. In order to receive aid and loan from World Bank, we had to devalue our economy. That is why the rupee is to dollar rate is so much high. Not today, but back then it was. First of all, this led to what? This was to at least ensure some of the main aspects of Indian economy, to ensure economic stability in India. First reason was inflation and budget deficits were increasing. Inflation and budget deficits were increasing. Second, to align external values with domestic depreciation, boost exports for forex reserves. War with Pakistan increased the deficit further. Thereby, the results by all of this, by devaluation, was that our exports increased faster, our imports decreased, and trade deficit also decreased steeply. Devaluation actually worked for Indian economy. Do you understand how does this happen? If we devalue our currency, if we depreciate, or if our currency gets depreciated, it means our exports will boost up. This is already discussed in the past lectures. If you still have confusion, you can ask in the comment section, then we will discuss it in the next lecture. With this, the fourth 5-year plan comes up in 1969 and 74, but from 4th to 11th, we will discuss this in the next video. Till then, goodbye, thank you, and Jai Hind.